Hey everyone, this is Chris, and you're listening to One Cross Radio, and we're back for what I can't believe is our 200th episode. I didn't even realize this until right now, basically. As I was recording this, I was like, just taking a look at the podcast, and it said we were at 199 episodes. I'm like, oh dang, we're hitting 200. So if you've been with us this whole time for these past many years, thank you so much. Um, Sorry if I sound a little off. I'm a little under the weather. I feel like I say that a lot, but I get sick and sinus infections easy, and one's just been messing with me over the past several days. Um, so we're going to dive right in. I hope everybody who's listening had a fantastic Canada Day, a fantastic Independence Day, or as we like to call it in Canada, Happy Treason Day, you ungrateful colonials. Uh, all joking aside, I hope everybody was safe and had a fun time celebrating or not celebrating those days. Because there's reasons not to celebrate them, and that's valid and fair. But I hope you all have been safe, been staying cool. We got a heat wave going on up here in Ontario right now. Thankfully, it seems like the fires are done for now. Hopefully, that'll continue, and there will be no more inhaling smoke from forest fires. Um, okay, so today's topic is about a movie that's been out for a little while now, and I saw it a little bit ago. And truth be told, um, this is the episode I was going to record um, a couple weeks ago, but then because of how hectic and heavy and everything uh, involving wrapping up for the summer for schools as an EA was, I just didn't have it in me. So that's why I did the re-release with my brother, where we were just talking in general about Star Trek. I will be recording some episodes with my brother, hopefully over the summer, talking Star Wars on both this show and our my show with my boo Christian, Radio Arcade. So I'll make sure I keep you all in the know. But Dave Cook will be coming back to OCR, and I'm excited for it. But I vamped enough, and we are looking at the spectacular, the amazing, the web of that one doesn't work as well. Um, but we are looking at the newest release on the big screen featuring the one and only, evidently not one and only because there were like 200 variants. We are looking at Across the Spider-Verse, the newest Spider-Man film. Um, and like jokes aside, with the spectacular and amazing and insert adjective, um, because those are Spider-Man titles, that's actually how I feel about this film. Uh, Across the Spider-Verse it was spectacular. Uh, it was an amazing animated feature. It was a wonderful film. Um, I honestly don't have many complaints. Um, and by many, I can't think of really any. Well, okay, but they're nitpicks, so it's not like boo you for not doing this. Um, it's just I've got spider variants that I would have loved to see get a nod, and maybe they will in the sequel to this. Um, but by itself, nitpicks aside, this movie is utterly fantastic. It is just for my money, it's just as good as Into the Spider-Verse. Now it might not have as much of a singular focus as that one did, but Into the Spider-Verse, like yeah, they might have had ideas for where the sequels would go, but it could be its own self-contained story. Across the Spider-Verse works as its own story, but it is, I put it there with the great middle chapters of a trilogy. It really does a great job of telling a story within this film. The conflict mainly being between my favorite Spider-Man, Miguel O'Hara, Spidey 2099, and Miles. There's a great conflict there, a great story there. And it's not like Miguel is the out and out villain, but he is a bit of an antagonist. Um, and it works because anybody who's read Spidey 2099, especially those original issues in the 90s, know that Miguel can be a dick. He can be a, I won't say bad guy, like he's not like the bad guy like the Vulture or Green Goblin or anything like that, but he can be a not good person. Um like in the comics originally, he hooked up with his brother's girlfriend. He cheated on his girlfriend with this other person, and they eventually got engaged. And then it seemed like he was cheating on her with his original ex-girlfriend, even though he wasn't. But he had done enough shady stuff that his arc was Spider-Man becoming Spider-Man actually made him a better person. So I like seeing some of those faults, even though they're showing and being displayed differently. I liked that in this movie. Jill actually asked me afterwards, like, "Were you all right with him kind of being the like almost a villain?" I'm like, "Yeah, because he can be when he gets singularly focused, he can be a dick. He can be a bad person. Not an evil person, but he might have good intentions, but he can do bad with them. Um, and I know some other Spidey 2099 fans took a little bit of umbrage with that, but I'm like, it's in line with the character that's been established, that we know and love from this property. So I was fine with it. I loved seeing Spidey 2099 on the big screen. Oscar Isaac did a fantastic job as him. Um, and I was here for it. They made it work. His conflict with Miguel being Miguel shouldn't be Spider-Man, because Spidey 2099 is all about preserving the canon events, like preserving the time stream, just the multiversal one. Um, and we find out that the villain, the Spot, in this, who they do really, really well, who they do really, really well. I gotta say, like the Spot can be hit or miss. Like when he was introduced in the show, the '90s cartoon, you're like, huh. But he was fun in here. And he was voiced by Jason Schwartzman, who you can tell is having a blast. Um, he transported the spider from a different universe to Miguel's universe, and that's what bites him. So Spider-Man 2099 is like, you shouldn't exist. Like you're an anomaly, and another universe is gone because they don't have a Spider-Man because you exist. And Miguel learned preserving the timelines the hard way because he was in a different universe where a different Miguel O'Hara had existed and died, and then he took up the role of that man as a husband and as a father, and eventually things go sideways, and then he dealt with loss, so he's now like, nope, we it sucks, but the people die and we have to preserve these timelines. And it's hinted at like Miles, like his canon event is going to be his father dying when he becomes a police captain, and Gwen's father became a police captain, and he was supposed to die, and that's actually part of why she's left. She doesn't want to be. They had a falling out. They do a great job explaining Spider Gwen in this. Now I'm gonna from here on out I might call her Spider Gwen, but I'll try to give her her official title from the comic, Ghost Spider. Um, Originally she was just called Spider Woman, but then when they started doing more and more multiversal Spider-versal stories in the comics, there are a number of Spider Girls and Spider Women. um, Most notably Jessica Drew's Spider Woman. So then Gwen has in the comics, I think about a year or two ago, maybe longer, officially adopted the title Ghost Spider. And so they try to call her that even when she's in multiversal stories. They try to use that name just so then it's partially branding, but also so it's not confusing. Um, so this film does a great job showcasing Ghost Spider's her story. They dive in a bit to the event that separated her from her father. So her father is Captain George Stacy. She got bit by the spider. Peter in this reality became the lizard, and then he died in a battle with Gwen. And then so Captain Stacy is absolutely convinced that Ghost Spider killed Peter, and he won't stand for it. So he is hunting her, even though she's trying to save things. Eventually, she tells her father who she is, and then she dips. She gets one of these multiversal watches, and she dips. She joins the team. Um, and it's a great dynamic, and being in Ghost Spider's world is visually stunning. It's something they did really well in Into the Spider-Verse, but they amp it up exponentially here because we actually get to go to these characters' universes, and then they really lift stuff from the comics that these characters were in. So Spider Gwen's, sorry, Ghost Spider's reality, we get a lot of purple, we get a lot of blue, we get a lot of vibrant colors, and at times dulled, but it's such a unique and different art style. But if you've ever picked up a Ghost Spider comic, um, or her original run when she got introduced into the Spider-Verse comic event, like, you are watching that book on the big screen, and it's fantastic. They do it with other spider people as well. When we go to the Spider-Man from India's, I just don't know his name. When we go to his world, it's very different than any other world we've been in. That character was voiced by Sony. If the name rings a bell, it did for me a little bit, and then I had to look it up, and I realized, um, if you're into superhero movies, where you'll know him from is he plays Dopender in the Deadpool films. So it was cool to see him. As the Spider-Man from India. Hearing him was really cool. Um, we get Spider-Punk, who is voiced by Daniel Kaluuya. I'm probably mispronouncing his name, but he was excellent as Spider-Punk, and Spider-Punk won me over throughout the movie, and that's a testament to the this writing team, to this production team. Um, this movie is chock full of so much spider lore that if you're a longtime fan, there's just so much to appreciate and sink your teeth into. What I love with that as well, though, is they make it engaging. Where if there's, like I said, around 200 variants of Spider-Man. So when we get to like this, I don't know what else to call it, but like the Spider Center, I think it's in Nueva York, like Miguel's reality. When we get there, and we see all these different Spider-Men, we are treated to like this rich cacophony of so many variants. Some who are just like, hey, that's a suit that Peter wore for one or two comics, but it's now its own fleshed out personality. Um, we get so much there. There's Spider Rex, who was a recent addition. I think I was only loosely aware of it, but I'm like, oh, okay, that's dope. A T-Rex is doing the thwip. Um, but then of course you get like the Ben Riley Spider-Man, and that's voiced by dang it, I just closed the tab that I had. Here, let me see. Wanted to say Jake from Andy Samberg, aka Jake from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He voices Ben Riley, and I've seen some Ben Riley fans take issue with it, how he voiced him, or not how he voiced him, just the characterization, because it was a great send up of the almost broody, needlessly like angsty '90s comics. And even if Ben Riley himself wasn't that character type, it's still a great way to have that nod and mock that era of comics in a tongue-in-cheek way, because none of it is mean-spirited. You can tell there's a love for it across the board. um there were another, I'm sure I missed some, like I saw one Easter egg site say, oh, the Japanese Spider-Man showed up in it. I'm like, where I was looking for him in the group shots. Anybody who knows me knows I've developed a love for Japanese Spider-Man. My boy Takayuma Takuya Yamashiro. So much fun and such a ridiculous character. Um, but I don't recall seeing him in any of the group shots, and especially because that character has Leopardon, and that's part of the lore that's become wider known. I'm like, nah, if you're gonna have Japanese Spider-Man, there's gonna be Leopardon's gonna show up. There's gonna be a voice cameo or something to make him stand out. So I'm not sure I agree with that Easter egg because he was rumored to be in it, and even on the website that lists him as an Easter egg, they just have a picture from the show. They don't even have a picture of him in the wide shots. And that's where the nitpick is. Like, with more of these wider universe characters, like some of the variants got more time to shine than others, and that's fine. That's going to happen. A great one was we saw Spectacular Spider-Man from the amazing show Spectacular Spider-Man, and he got a line of dialogue voiced by the voice actor from that show, Josh Keaton. That was really, really cool. Spider-Man Unlimited from a show that I'm not a fan of at all got a cameo on the big screen. I'm like, you know what? That's pretty dope. Um, I know it's not my show, but I've got friends. I think Christian said he was a pretty big fan of it. Um, for how different it was. He like even seeing that stuff where it might not be like, hey, that's not my favorite take, but it is somebody's. Even seeing that on the big screen, I'm like, they pulled from that. That's really cool. Like, I can't think of outside of a couple people, like anybody universally loving Spider-Man Unlimited. But that different version of Peter showing up on the big screen, it's dope. That's really dope. That's that's cool. Um and Spectacular Spider-Man showing up, like you saw the art style in the background, and Jill heard me go like, and then when you see him in his suit on the big screen, I'm like, yeah. Jill's just like, I heard you happily reacting to so many things. That was really, really cool. Of course, there's other characters who I would have loved to get a moment to shine. Like Japanese Spider-Man or Kane Parker. That's he's my favorite of the clones. The second, and in my opinion, best Scarlet Spider. Love me Kane Parker. Um, since they're doing stuff like that, or we're involving other Spider characters, like, hey, so there's not like 15 active Spider characters in, say, Miles' universe or Peter B. Parker's universe, then that's a way we could get, say, Silk to the big screen or something like that. So it's little stuff like that where I'm like, it's pure fanboy nitpicky, where I'm like, but this character I love wasn't there. I'm not going to hold that against the movie when there's so many other awesome things where never ever did I think Spider-Man Unlimited would show up in this movie, and it's dope that he did. even if I'm not a fan of him. And of course, Insomniac Spider-Man shows up as well, which is great. Lego Spider-Man showed up, which was also great. The amount of pull that they did for this, the amount of care that they brought in, and even stuff like with Insomniac Spider-Man, they got the voice actor Yuri Lowenthal to voice him in this. It's stuff like that where it's like you don't have to do that, and you did, and it was still true to that version of the character. Let alone so many of the other cameos and other things. Like you're getting, they didn't even just keep it animated with this being like multiversal. You saw stuff from the Toby movies, from the Garfield movies, casts from those movies, like their voices were used in this. um and then there were, of course, references to MCU, Spidey. There were several of them, and that's all really, really cool stuff. And I can't praise this movie enough. It works so well as a longtime Spider-Man fan. It is so rich. Like if you've even if you haven't read the comics, but if you've just been watching some of these shows, watching some of these movies, there's gonna be stuff that's gonna give you that nostalgia hit, but it doesn't feel like, oh hey, look, see? Like it's makes sense within the context of the story. And if it doesn't make sense to you, it's not going to be like, hey, we're going to harp on it so much that you're going to feel lost if you've never seen this. Like if you've never seen Spectacular Spider-Man, Spider-Man Unlimited, or on and on and on and on I go, if you never read any comics in the 90s, the Ben Riley characterization is just going to be funny to you. Like it works because they make it still funny. It's funnier if you know, but if you don't, it's still funny. It's not alienating. And that is something that's a hard line to walk, but they did it so well in this movie. Um you could argue that the movie is a bit of a love story between Gwen and Miles, but it is so bloody sweet. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a romantic love story. It could just be a love story of friendly love or compassionate love that these two people have for each other. Now, do I think they're leaning in the romance way? Absolutely. But if it doesn't end up that, I'm not going to say, well, it's not a love story because people can still love each other if it's not romantically. Um, but the amount of detail, like the movie starts off with Gwen, and it's less of a, it's still Miles's vehicle, but I'd say this one, in compared to the other one, starts to become a little bit more of an ensemble because Gwen has, I believe, almost as much screen time as Miles does. And Haley Seinfeld is just spectacular as Gwen. If they ever do a live action Ghost Spider or Spider Gwen movie, get Haley. Just get her. Like she does the voice so well. We've seen her as Kate Bishop in Hawkeye. She can do action. I think she could do uh, a Ghost Spider Gwen version of Gwen Stacy very, very well. I hope they translate that. The movie ended in such a good spot where you know it's setting up for the third film. Um and it ends where Miles thinks he's going back to his universe, but he goes back to the wrong one. I'm pretty sure it goes back to the one where his spider was from and not where he was from. And there he is captured by he's captured by the Prowler, his uncle from his universe, voiced by Mahershala Ali, and a villainous Miles. Um and that's a pretty dope place to end it. He's on the run from Spidey 2099 and his whole team because he's trying to save his father, even though they're like, no, it's a canon event, and if you disturb the canon, you'll just like you'll doom your planet. You're dooming your universe. Like he's trying to go save his father. Gwen leaves to save Miles, she goes to his universe and finds he's not there. Um, and it ends in such a way where I'm like, it sets up for that next movie, but it doesn't feel like what did we just do for the last 2 hours? Like that was there are some sequels in trilogies or franchises where you're just stalling to get to the next one. I didn't see Fantastic Beasts 3 because Fantastic Beasts 2 was bad. And Fantastic Beasts 1 was all right, but the whole time during Fantastic Beasts 2 I was just very aware of like you're planning to do like 5 of these, and you're like, okay, we're just sequel baiting and setting up like what's the point of being here for this? There are other sequels where you're like, why are what? And it just ends in an unsatisfactory place where this I liken it to in a way Empire Strikes Back where Empire left you on such a note of like what just happened? Um and the characters are left in a darker place than they started off with. That's very much where Across the Spider-Verse ends. Miles is captured. There's seemingly he's worried his father is going to die, which happens in the Miles Morales in the Insomniac Spider-Man game, Miles's comic run. His parents die. Like this is it's almost a certainty, and I'm hoping they don't in the movie because I love the dynamic that they're developing with that family. Um, so it left me hyped for the next one. I didn't have any trepidation approaching this like I did say No Way Home. Um even that and No Way Home is the best live action Spider-Man movie, but I remember going into it, I was nervous about it a little bit because I'm like, it's Sony, it's a live action Spider-Man movie. The other two MCU Spider-Man movies have been good, but anytime a Sony Spider-Man movie has been loaded, it's been bad. It hasn't worked out for it. Um, I didn't have that trepidation because it was like 99% of the same team that did the last one. So I'm like, okay, no, we're in good hands. People who care, people who have a deep love of this. Um, and this is something that there's a desire for, and there hasn't been anything yet to make me nervous about it. I can't recommend this movie enough. It is utterly fantastic. If you even mildly enjoyed Into the Spider-Verse, go see this movie. Now, of course, it'll be great on Disney Plus. It'll be great on streaming or on your big home. If you've got a home theater, it'll be great on your big screen TV. It'll be great on your phone if you're watching it on that. But I would honestly, if you can, I'd recommend going seeing it in theaters on the biggest screen possible. It's not one that needs the big screen, but it is so immersive when it is. Like being in those different worlds where you get that dramatically different art style is so engaging on the big screen. So do yourself the favor, go see it. I cannot recommend this movie enough. It is on par with Into the Spider-Verse. It's utterly fantastic. And before I end the episode, it reminded me of things. um, it reminded me of some things, some feelings I had coming out of No Way Home that were only intensified when after Into the Spider Across the Spider-Verse dropped, we got a trailer for Craven. Craven's getting a movie. Who asked for this, Sony? Who asked for this? Like, I don't know how the same studio can pump out two amazing Spider-Man movies that are animated, but then the same studio will give. I'm on the record of not being a fan of the Venom movies, but I understand that the first one, in a weird way, found an audience, was a lightning in a bottle situation for that audience. There's a demand for more of them. It's not coming from me. It might not be a huge audience demand, but there's a demand for it. Like there's a fan desire for Venom 3. Um Nobody asked for Morbius. And I don't know if it actually like the whole it's Morbin time. I'm like, I feel like this is people being the movie's a joke that people are in on, not necessarily the studio, because the studio was like, oh, this is a serious movie that nobody asked for. And now it's the same with Craven. And I don't get it. I don't get it. Uh like one of the things I loved in this movie was we got Peter B. Parker and we got his daughter, and his daughter's Mayday. Like Mayday Parker has a fan cachet. Mayday Parker is something that people desire. Um, Nobody asked for a freaking solo Craven movie, and going in from coming out from across the Spider-Verse, I'm like, and being reminded of how well they pulled off multiversal multiple Spider-Men in live action. It it furthers baffles me where it's like Sony, nobody asked for Morbius. Nobody is asking for Craven. Sure, a couple people might be asking for Venom, but coming out of No Way Home, know what there was a giant fan demand for? Amazing Spider-Man 3. You could do a live action Miles there where there's an age gap, and that could be helping Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man after No Way Home, like on his path from being back from like the dark, angry Spider-Man who doesn't pull his punches anymore. Miles, a live action Miles, could do great with that. You could springboard into a live action Miles movie through Amazing Spider-Man. People were also asking for a fourth Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie, which I even said in my No Way Home episode. Never did I think I'd be open for it, but I am because of how well they pulled off his Spider Man and they structured his role to his limited strengths as an actor. Again, I'm not slamming him. I just don't think he's a great actor, but he was great in that movie because they did a role that did him service. Like, there was an actual fan demand for Spider Man 4, and heck, my thing with that is like you've got an older Spider-Man, a Spider-Man who's been doing this for years. Like in that he in No Way Home, he was the sage, like older brother. Where it's like, great, you can do this, and in his, that's where you can introduce Silk in live action, or even I would love Mayday Parker because you've got him and Mary Jane canonically married, as we found out from No Way Home, was like, cool. You could introduce Mayday in live action. So it, I know it's weird that Across the Spider Verse tied it in for me, but it just reminded me, like, man, they pulled off They're pulling off these multiversal stories so well that people would now be accepting of multiple live action Spider Men. Like they can do it. There's, I don't think it would take a lot of explaining to the layperson, like, oh, this is like, because you've got the starting point from No Way Home to be like, yeah, no, we're back in Toby's verse. It's its own separate thing. Doesn't tie into the Avengers. We're back in Andrew's verse. It doesn't tie into the Avengers. It doesn't tie into the wider MCU. It's easy. They explained it in that movie. It's an easy launching pad. There's an actual fan demand for it, and yet it's, oh, yeah, we're getting Morbius. We're getting Craven. Apparently, we're getting Madam Web. Who asked for these? If you did, let me know because I want to know why. All right, so I'm going to wrap it here. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you have seen Across the Spider Verse, let me know what your thoughts were. Now, I did see some minor controversies show up around the movie online, which in a way I thought was a bit ridiculous, but then I'm sadly also not surprised. Um, some of those minor ones were people like, oh, they really changed Jessica Drew from the comics. um I'll say I'm fine with the changes. I know Jessica Drew eventually got a fan base and eventually became a very different character, but when she started out, honestly, the only reason that Spider-Woman was ever created was so another comic company, i.e. DC, wouldn't create a character named Spider-Woman where they own the copyright. And then her initial stories were just very convoluted, very all over the place. She didn't get good until like 2000, 2010. So with it being a multiversal story, and you could say she's that universe's one, so the other Jessica Drew from the comics can exist somewhere else. I'm fine with it. I didn't take any issue with that whatsoever. Um, I'm not the hugest Spider-Woman fan. My favorite version of Spider-Woman Jessica Drew is the one from the Ultimate Marvel universe, where she was fantastic. Um, and she was a clone of Peter Parker because the Ultimate Universe did an Ultimate Clone Saga, just much better than the clone saga we got in the 90s from the main Marvel Universe. Um, the other controversy, I saw some take issue. Now, certain countries did, and then other people um, took issue with Gwen having in her room like I believe it was a trans rights flag, and then saying support trans kids. There's no harm in that. There's there's no harm in that, and there you're making it a huge thing about nothing. And then certain countries banned it because of that, and that's its own other conversation. But it wasn't even like it was a plot point. It's not even like they're like, oh, this character who's canonically a woman, we're now saying is trans or anything like that. And even then, um, it's like, okay, we're dealing with multiversal, we're dealing with fictional characters. Who's to say there's not a trans Gwen Stacy out in the multiverse? Who cares? So this is where it's just kind of like, why are we making this a much to do about nothing? Like, there's actual things to be angry at going on in the world. Anyways, I am going to wrap it there because I loved this movie. If you've seen it, let me know your thoughts. If you haven't seen it, I can't encourage you enough. I know there were spoilers in there, and I didn't necessarily throw in a spoiler warning, but the movie's been out for over a month now, so I'm fine talking about it with spoilers without putting a spoiler warning. Um, I might have one in the description just in case, but still. All that being said, I hope you all have a wonderful day. I hope you're all staying safe. If you're up here in Ontario with me, I hope you're staying cool. Take care, and God bless, my friends. Peace!